So, any questions? Everything go okay? Any questions? Alright, if not, I'll get you guys your notes for today. We're actually skipping a section. The last one kind of just kind of went back over kind of some of the stuff we'd already done, so we might do that one like after the break.
Who's Margot?
So it's from Christmas vacation. I can show you guys the clip in a little bit. It's from, there's like a couple of it. So I'm Todd, and Miss McDonald's Margot. They're like the yuppie, like the hippie, or not the hippie, like the trendy couple next door to the Christmas vacation people.
That's a great one.
Thank you.
Did you share this?
So if you guys will take a minute to do the warm up, please. Yeah.
That's what I got to.
Well, I don't need one.
Oh, you got one?
Hopefully she does.
What's that?
How many of
Oh,
them?
yeah, sorry. Yep. I need one on it. Alright, so we skipped section 8.3. Like I said, we might come back to that one after break. It was just more parallelograms, but it was kind of all the same rules, just kind of reversed and reiterated. So we'll kind of figure that out if we need it. Just a reminder, we're doing notes today and tomorrow. We'll come back from break and kind of finish up the chapter, review and test. So just know that I know that over our break we lose a lot of things you guys, like you won't remember everything. We'll come back and do a chart like we typically do. So kind of just making sure you hang on to notes and that you have those to study after break. So we're talking about rhombuses, rectangles, and squares today, which are hopefully shapes obviously we know already, but we're again probably going into more detail than you probably ever thought about or talked about before with these shapes. So hopefully you guys are able to find the value of x in the parallelogram. We had to do this a little bit in our homework last time. And it has to do with the properties of a parallelogram, that those lines are parallel. And that tells us then that we have a whole bunch of angles that are equal as well. So we actually have alternate interior angles there. I'm just going to pull up my notes so I have them all. So what's the value of x in this case?
37.
37, because we have those alternate interior angles. So since those lines are parallel, that means these two angles are the same. So x just has to be 37. And then it says, find the measure of ACD. ACD is this angle. So we want to find that measure. Hopefully you notice this one is this 110 up here, right? If that's 110, what does ACD have to be? 70, because they have to add to 180 together. So kind of some of those angle measures are important in our parallelograms. Being comfortable with those as those come up. All right, so again, we're talking about these other shapes. So rhombuses, rectangles, and squares. They're more specific types of quadrilaterals, so talking about those shapes. So we're going to talk about what makes something a rhombus, what makes something a rectangle, what makes something a square. So it has to have these things. So first of all, it has to be a quadrilateral, so it has to have four sides. It has to have four sides already. So that part of it is kind of a given. In order for a quadrilateral, so a four-sided figure, to become a rhombus, do you guys know what's true of a rhombus? Do you know what's true of a rhombus? This is a rhombus. Any guesses on what you know about a rhombus?
Two sides are equal to each other.
What's it?
The opposite sides are equal.
The opposite sides are equal, but actually all the sides are equal in a rhombus. So a rhombus is kind of like a crooked square. You might have heard it called a diamond as well, maybe. But a rhombus, it becomes a rhombus if all four sides are equal. So all the sides have to be equal. So a quadrilateral becomes a rhombus if it has four congruent sides. So it becomes a rhombus if it has four congruent sides. Now I want to get a little more specific though with you as well. Basically a rhombus, so like Abby mentioned, the opposite sides are equal. A rhombus is a parallelogram that has four equal sides. So it has all the properties of a parallelogram. So it's a parallelogram with four equal sides. So that means the opposite sides are parallel, the opposite angles are equal. There's a lot going on here. So everything you guys know about parallelograms is also true about a rhombus, but now all the sides are equal. We talked about a rectangle last time. So do you guys remember what a rectangle has that makes it special? What does a rectangle have that it makes it special? We had taken a parallelogram and kind of set it upright. What was different about a parallelogram and a rectangle? Yeah, go ahead, Lena. The right angles. So it becomes a rectangle, and so a quadrilateral with four right angles, it becomes a rectangle. So any four-sided shape with four right angles is going to be a rectangle. There's no way to draw a shape that has four right angles and four sides that is not a rectangle. Oops, that's not the word. So remember, it's a parallelogram with one right angle. It has four parallelogram has one right angle, then it becomes a rectangle. And a square is basically these two things together. It's almost like, I always say it's like matchmaking, or like the birds and the bees of math. It's like basically if a rectangle and a rhombus put their qualities together, it becomes a square. So if it has 4 equal sides, 4 right angles, then it's a square. Angles. So it has the properties of both of those. And basically a square is just a parallelogram that's also a rhombus and also a rectangle.
I feel that.
It's very like violent for the morning. So basically a parallelogram that's also a square and a rhombus becomes a rectangle and a rhombus, that it is a square. So it has all the properties of all of those shapes. So when you're ready, you guys can flip the page. A lot of properties we need to list today, so we'll probably get through all the properties and then take a break. And we will end up making, I know, yeah, this sounds really violent. Yeah, we shut the door, like, I was like, it's like too early in the morning.
Because it's Sophie's choice over there. I'm like, oh no.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like someone is getting murdered, and I shut the door.
Oh.
So clearly.
Oh.
So again, we'll add to our properties here. So a parallelogram becomes a rhombus based off another property here. So we'll list these. Again, lots of properties. Again, we'll make a chart of this when we come back from break. So this next one for a rhombus is if I draw the diagonals in, the diagonals are going to be perpendicular. And they probably don't look perpendicular on mine because my screen is all stretched, but the diagonals are perpendicular. Diagonals are perpendicular. I have another diagonals rule here for rhombuses. It's also a rhombus. If the diagonals bisect the angles that they intersect. So they're going to bisect these angles. The diagonals bisect the angles. Now it becomes a rectangle if the diagonals are congruent. So I'm going to draw, like label them. So we don't have enough streaming going around. Once you have mine, I don't know if you can hear it, but there's like rooms next to us are all like blood curdling screaming, so we're kind of freaked out here. But also when those diagonals are congruent, that means all of these lines are going to be equal to one another. So it bisects each other, and the diagonals are congruent, so all four of those will be the same length. So why don't we get through the properties on the bottom of this page. We'll write a bunch of properties of like basically all the properties, kind of put them in one place, and then we'll take a break. So let's get to the bottom of this page and so that you guys know where we're headed. A bunch of bullet points to fill out, and then we'll do examples that. All right, so our different properties here. So they have little bullet points because that's how many we have. I'll try to mark up the drawing with all the different pieces. So now for rectangle, rhombus, and square, hopefully you realize they're all right, or they're all four-sided. So that's kind of given to us already. What else do you guys, tell me the things you guys know about a rectangle already. So there should be 4 different things we know. I think we've listed them all already, so if you want to cheat, you can go back. It's not really cheating, but what do you guys know about a rectangle? Someone tell me something. Yep.
Opposite sides are congruent.
Opposite sides are congruent. So, yep. I'm going to write equal. And what else do we know about it other than just being congruent? They're also parallel. So I'm going to use those two symbols, so equal and parallel. So they're equal and parallel because it's a parallelogram. So a rectangle is just a special type of parallelogram. That's also true of a parallelogram, but it's true of a rectangle, so we want to make sure we list that. What else do we know? A few of these things we just said like moments ago. The right angles. So the 4 right angles. Right angles. And the other one's the one we just mentioned is the diagonals being congruent. And this might start to get a little bit messy up here. Now, just to kind of cover myself, is all properties of parallelograms also apply to rectangles. So anything that's true about a parallelogram is also true of a rectangle. It's just a more specific one. It's like it has all those qualities and then some. And that's kind of a cover ourselves there because we kind of mentioned some of that up here, the opposite sides being equal and parallel. So then a rhombus. So what do you guys want to say about a rhombus? All sides are congruent. So this is kind of a summary, making sure we're kind of covering everything we just talked about today. And And the two we just talked about up on the top is the diagonals being perpendicular, but the diagonals also bisecting. And again, we just wrote that down up on the top, but there's a lot to remember, so it doesn't hurt to rewrite it. Don't forget that symbol for perpendicular is like the upside down T, so just in case like you see that somewhere and you forgot about it. So the diagonals are perpendicular, but the diagonals also bisect the angles. And then also, again, just like kind of a cover ourselves, all the properties of parallelograms are also true of rhombuses or rhombi. And we'll finish up with square before we take a break. We've been doing a lot of writing. So the last thing for a square, you're going to be glad when you hear this, basically all of the above. So all of those properties, all of the properties of parallelograms, basically everything that we've written down today is also true of a square. So all properties of parallelograms, rectangles, rhombus. I'm going to write rhombi because it's more fun than rhombuses. Either one is acceptable in the math world for whatever reason. All right. So we'll take a break. What do you guys want to do with our break today? Student choice. We could find a fun Kahoot. We could do Pictionary, fun Kahoot. I'm jumping in here, but
What's the issue?
in notes. We'll take a picture of somebody's notes. Yeah. All right, I'm going to pause the video.